Eccoci qua, benvenuti e benvenute. Partiamo. Prendete posto, c'è ancora qualche posto libero. Se è tutto in ordine, partiamo. Allora,
all right, just a couple of housekeeping pieces of information. This is going to be a long morning. I'm Riccardo Out. I'm the CEO of Will and Cora Media. I'm not going to be the moderator. Actually, I'm not a moderator as a professional, but I will moderate this morning. We are going to have a long range of videos of speakers, and if I make mistakes, please bear with me. Another housekeeping piece of information. There is a simultaneous translation service available into English as well as into the LISS and the international LISS. So far so good. And let's start immediately. We have our guest here at the Triennale. Today we're going to announce the 24th International Expo of Triennale Milano. Currently, we are all focusing on the present, the here and now. And I think it is very valuable to have the event that is going to span over the next 6 months here at Triennale to look at the future. So thank you very much for what you have done. And I would like to start with Carla Morgallo, who is the director of Triennale. So how was this Expo conceived? Thank you very much, Riccardo, and welcome to you all. This Expo stems from a consideration that was made during the 23rd International Expo, using the approach that is the traditional approach of Triennale, co-designing and co-planning, that led on the 11th of September to an international forum hosting some eminent figures like Richard Sennett, Gaia Vince, and many others who have helped us pondering on this topic and have provided some guidance for the future International Expo. And it also stems from the international cooperation with Triennale hosting in December the meeting of 152 ambassadors who met to discuss the importance of culture in international relations, and Triennale hosted a number of events and meetings that enabled us to provide a valuable contribution to this discussion. Before leaving the floor to the President, Mr. Boeri, I would like to show you a video. As you're going to hear, this International Expo is the result of a collective work by a number of curators. And there is one in particular who have been very good at summarizing what the next Triennale Expo is going to be about. He's one of the most eminent figures, Mr. Gates, and I would like to show you his video. Thank you very much.
What I feel is that Eastern people have always been engaged in taking the poorest materials from their vulgar origins and trying to lift them to the much higher strata of tense and concentrated cultural and psychic adventures. In the East, I have hardly ever seen everyday life reduced to a commedia. I have hardly ever seen anybody laugh at himself, anybody look at his own defeat, misery, decay as an easy reality, which could be cataloged and accepted. I have always seen everything trying to transform itself into a cosmic act. Ettore speaks about the power of kind of the Japanese experience and their ability to kind of lift everyday materials, ordinary materials, base materials, lift them to something cosmic. And I feel like that is done in Castellana, and it's something that Yoshihiro was also deeply invested in. And so my project is a project of introduction, where I've acquired this collection of Yoshihiro Koide, who was a potter from Tokoname, the town where I studied ceramics. And after his passing, his family was trying to make a decision about what to do with his wares. I was looking for a collection that could act as a kind of reference library for handmade objects, and the timing worked out. And so I'm introducing Yoshihiro's work to the world and introducing Yoshihiro to this amazing maker in Italy. When I first arrived at Castellana, I was really moved by Sotsas's investment in craft. And when I realized that he had this essay that was kind of referencing the power of Eastern craft, I thought, oh, my project should be this, this synergy between the work that's happening in the house and, in a way, the way potters lived on the San Pomici path in Tokoname. So in Tokoname, there's this hill that is like a potter's hill, and all along this hill is this path, and potters have been there for generations, and they sometimes would adorn the exterior of their buildings with their pots so that the pots could age and weather. I wanted to maybe have a bit of Tokoname land on Castellana, and for this moment have this mashup of ideologies made available for a public. One of the key themes of this exhibition has to do with inequality. And, you know, I thought a lot about what happens when a town that was thriving, that was kind of built to be a single commerce town, which Tokoname was. It was known in the kind of contemporary world as a place that created sewer pipes, and they made clay sewer pipes for all of Japan. And eventually the sewer pipe manufacturing was replaced by plastics. So one way of thinking about inequality for me has to do with the ways in which, you know, when a town struggles or a city struggles and they've lost their economic core, either because that core moves to another country or moves to the suburbs. You know, in Chicago, we've experienced waves of this, but cities like Detroit and Akron, Ohio, and parts of Pennsylvania, that there have been these moments in American history and all over the world where a town loses its relevance, and then disparity sets in. One of the things that I've spent a lot of my artistic career doing is thinking about, in the face of this disparity, or what could feel like a kind of economic inequality, what role does culture play? What role can an artist play in reconstituting that disparity that often exists in places where there seems to be inequality? And so I want to focus more on the richness of a place that seems poor than the poverty of a place that seems poor, but experience them at in many ways, people often celebrate the craft prowess of Japan, but rarely do we talk about the complexities of access to commerce, cultural pride, the relationship between cultural heritage and the desire for this commerce activity, which may in some cases be antithetical to the way the craft is preserved. This project for me feels like I'm lifting up the ghosts of Tokoname and introducing the Italian ghosts to the Japanese ghosts.
L'avrete capito, lo vedete anche
So, as you may have understood, the core of these 6 months of Triennale were devoted to inequality. So why is that, President Boeri? Well, I think that
Thirster's Gate's words are important. Thirster refers to the history of the Italian design through Sottsass, but also he refers to the great tradition of the Italian craftsmanship. And of course, historically, Triennale has always been proposing it. He refers to work as a main engine to overcome inequalities. And we asked Thirster to be one of the protagonists of this exhibition because we believe that he fully represents part of the aims of this large exhibition that will be inaugurated in May the 12th. Since 1928, Triennale actually is involved in the BIE located in Paris, a kind of Expo. And as Morogallo just told us, the BIE always proposes initiatives devoted not necessarily intertwined to the themes we propose, namely design, architecture, urban planning, fashion, graphics, but rather it deals with topics that have to do with the contemporary age. In the last decades or last century, we talked about reconstruction, about environment at the beginning of the 80s. We also talked about schools and, once again, differences and identity. But always through the perspectives of the different disciplines involved in the various projects. And hence, Thirsters is trying to understand how to overcome inequalities through the use of craftsmanship. And indeed, the various initiatives we will host in the coming months are initiatives proposed by designers, scholars, scientists, artists, whom from all over the world are tackling the issue of inequalities with a positive approach. We will host 8 great exhibitions, so 8 great curators, and this is the real innovation of this initiative. We will have 8 special contributions, 8 installations, starting from the one that will be installed outside the Triennale Museum, and these installations will accompany the visit inside the museum. We'll also certainly have a theater season, which is indeed a 9th initiative with its own curator. And I believe that we will be dealing from different perspectives this theme, inequalities. There you see some data. This is an issue that involves us all, and it requires several perspectives. Let me conclude by saying that it was almost compulsory that to conclude a trilogy of international exhibitions which started 6 years ago and whose main topic was the environment. If you remember, Broken Nature with Paolo Antonelli, MoMA. That was an extraordinary collection of ideas and proposals. We were considering the impact, the human impact onto the environment. So 3 years ago, then, with unknown unknowns, we know that at the time, the pandemic was still a cruel risk to all of us. And so we looked at what science could do, at what projects could do in order to overcome that big crisis. Now, I believe that today, when we talk about inequalities, we are trying to understand that there's no issue in the history of humankind that can be isolated from the theme of inequality, starting from climate change. There's no way to do something effective without understanding how to tackle the issue of inequalities and how to make sure that a superficial politics in dealing with climate change could indeed bring about benefits to those who already have many of them. I'm thinking of the rich countries, which suffer less of the climate change, and instead disadvantages to those who are the real victims of the climate crisis without being responsible for that. Thank you so much, Mr. President. And I believe it is very important to underline the strategic choice that you made, that Triennale made, that expresses the real essence of a Triennale. Triennale is always looking outside of what happens in its walls. So I believe that this initiative is certainly extraordinary. Now the time has come to listen to some more institutional interventions. You already mentioned the Bureau International d'Exposition, so let's hear Dimitri Kerkensens, the Secretary General of BIE.
Dear President of Triennale Milano, dear Stefano, dear curators, ladies and gentlemen. At the heart of each expo, organized under the auspices of the Bureau International des Expositions, lies a fundamental mission to exhibit the means at humankind's disposal for meeting the needs of civilization. This guiding principle has shaped the very nature of expos, making them platforms for collective reflection, innovation, and exchange. The 24th International Exhibition of Triennale Milano, like its preceding editions, perfectly embodies this mission by inviting us to examine one of the most pressing challenges of our time, inequalities. In a world with evolving disparities, this edition serves as a crucial opportunity to explore not only the divides that exist, but also the potential pathways towards a more balanced and inclusive future. Global inequalities are becoming increasingly pronounced and complex. The 24th International Exhibition offers a timely platform to confront these issues head-on, to question our preconceived notions, and to envision a more equitable future. With the existing fractures and new cracks threatening our shared humanity, this important international exhibition invites us to reflect upon the gray area between division and unity. The theme of inequalities compels us to consider not just the imbalances in society, but also the various aspects of life, work, and culture that tell us apart from one another. The BIE has always held a very special place for the International Exhibition of Triennale Milano. It plays a unique and important role, blending the diversity and innovation of expos with a precise and careful curation of design institutions. It provides us with a tremendous platform for dialogue and exchange on a human scale, encouraging artists, designers, and researchers to share their creations and observations with the world. This 24th edition of the International Exhibition once again brings countries from around the world to engage with a common theme, present their unique perspectives, and take inspiration from the stories and experiences of each other. Each international participant has its own interpretation of inequalities, its own account of the new challenges that are emerging and how they can be resolved. On this crucially important theme, the presentations of participating countries will be complemented by the fascinating thematic projects, shedding light on diverse forms of inequalities that can be found in our cities, in our societies, and in nature. Together, these exhibits and the public program will enrich our collective understanding of this subject and will foster a spirit of collaboration and innovation. In just over 2 months, the 24th International Exhibition will come to life, transforming the Palazzo dell'Arte into a vibrant hub of ideas, discussions, and discoveries. Visitors will have the opportunity to engage with thought-provoking exhibits, to participate in insightful dialogues, and to consider what solutions can be leveraged to tackle inequalities. These interactions will be unscripted, these encounters unexpected, and the insights invaluable. The collaboration that will take place as part of this international exhibition is a direct result of the spirit of cooperation that has shaped its development. The BIE is proud to work with the government of Italy, with the Triennale Milano Foundation and its institutional partners, and international participants to bring this crucial theme to the forefront of global discourse. I thank you all for your lasting commitment to this endeavor. As we embark on this exploration of inequalities, let us embrace the complexity of the challenge before us and let us be inspired by the diversity of solutions that emerge. I look forward to seeing you all at the opening of the 24th International Exhibition. Thank you.
So let's thank the General Secretary at the International Bureau of Expo, and let's hear from the Lombardy Governor, Mr. Fontana. Hello, everyone. I'm particularly pleased to join you with this short message on the occasion of the 24th International Exhibition of Triennale Milano. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on the choice of the theme of this exhibition, namely Inequalities, which closes a trilogy dedicated to the most current social dynamics. This topic confirms the attention that Triennale plays to the local and global context. Triennale is undoubtedly a cultural institution able to provide a valuable contribution to knowledge and to the benefit of Milan and Lombardy's growth. And it also provides a contribution to the dialogue, to the exchange of ideas, thanks to the study center that was recently opened and the collaboration with the academies involved in the preparatory work that led to the 24th exhibition. As is customary, this exhibition will provide the opportunity to ponder upon inequalities, starting from the vintage point of artists. I therefore like to thank the President Boreri, Triennale, and all the illustrious guests and speakers for their openness and dynamism. The best wishes for a successful 24th exhibition. Thank you very much. And thank you to Mr. Fontana, Governor of Lombardy. And now let's hear from the Municipality of Milan and the Mayor, Mr. Giuseppe Sala. Good morning to all. Today, we present an event which upholds international prestige of Milan, one of the most important events in the world dedicated to architecture and design, which has gradually managed to expand its horizons, imposing itself as an opportunity to exchange ideas and carry out an in-depth analysis. The 24th Triennale Milano International Exhibition, which kicks off on the 30th of May next, carries on the path started with the broken nature and with unknown unknowns. This year, the exhibition focuses on a very pressing topic that summarizes the contradictions and the emergencies of present times, namely inequalities. In an increasingly interconnected and aware world, inequalities that have always existed, though, appear more intolerable and create fractures and dramatic conflicts. During the Expo, this topic will be analyzed in depth, and such analysis will delve into issues that deeply question the contemporary world, such as, for instance, the environmental challenges with its implications on our way of life, or the development of artificial intelligence, which is a fascinating and disturbing topic at the same time. Such challenges, such contradictions, and such dynamics find their extreme expression in our cities. But it is precisely in the open and innovative environmental metropolis that it can be composed. The attention paid by Triennale to the role of cities is therefore an important added value which increases the interest for this event in an ever-widening audience. We are all aware of the current geopolitical situation that makes it difficult to remain optimist. The unique role played by culture and art is confirmed as a means of dialogue between peoples and nations. And this is why we welcome with even greater satisfaction the next international exhibition. I therefore would like to thank Mr. Boeri, the curators, the organizers, and all the guests who will contribute their competence and their skills to Milan, and will contribute opening a window on these topics here in Milan. So see you in Milan for a new great event confirming that Milan is an open, inclusive city embracing diversities, a city that has always believed in culture as an indispensable ingredient for the future of peace and progress.
Thank you to our Mayor, Giuseppe Sala. So, I would say that we can move on, and I shall invite to join me on stage 4 or 5 key arenas that are actually defining the importance of this initiative by Triennale. Triennale is actually working with universities that are located outside its 4 walls, and hence I shall invite to join me Elena Beccalli, rector of the Catholic University of Sacro Cuore, Antonella Caru, deputy rector and president of the Coordination Committee Arts and Humanities, Bocconi University, Emilio Faroldi, deputy rector of Polytechnic of Milan, and Massimo Labra, scientific director, National Biodiversity Future Center of the Bicocca University, Milan. Okay, so whom shall we start with? Well, let me start with President Boeri. And I have a question for you. Why this choice, and why did you decide to work with the local universities? Well, indeed, this is how we started to ponder on this topic, inequalities, more than 1 year ago. When we were dealing with our archive center Cuore, we invited the rectors of the different universities to discuss with us about the issue of inequalities. And indeed, that encounter was very useful because, you know, the organization of this exhibition, especially in our attempt to underline the fact that inequalities need to be tackled without any bias. Differences are not necessarily negative elements. They do become negative whenever we are not able to transform them, to modify them. The most worrying aspect, as you will see in inequalities, is that today often inequalities are still chains. You can't move them. There's nothing you can do. And what worries us is that in the life expectancy, the ability to reduce the original conditions have been reduced, and hence these inequalities are becoming obstacles instead of being resources to exploit. And we started to discuss about this since the beginning with the university. And this is the new element of this exhibition, because Triennale is working with the 5 most important local universities, and they are kind of intellectual oxygen resources, and they will play a key role. I really envy you for this, for the chances you have. And now let me give the floor to the rector of Catholic University, Elena Beccalli. I'd like to hear from her, what contacts did you have with Triennale? Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'd say that this exhibition certainly represents a very important opportunity to tackle one of the most urgent themes of our time. But actually, this is also providing us a chance to consolidate the historic ties we've always been having with Triennale and to open up new possible forms of cooperation. This topic is certainly essential and challenging because it is causing polarization, social tensions, and as an economist, I cannot but remind you of an element, although we've been presented many data so far already. Anyway, if we consider poverty as a daily income below $5.5, then We are talking of 3 billions in the world that find themselves in these conditions. So we should always bear in mind this element, because inequalities is associated with poverty, and there are different types of poverties. We don't deal only with economic poverty, but there's also the social poverty, the lack of access to water, food, health, and education. This is why, therefore, we think it's important to work together on this theme, inequalities, in order to try and contribute to find a new paradigm that could act onto the socio-economic system. And to this respect, certainly art is an extraordinary language that can be used. Indeed, art allows us to penetrate a regeneration dimension of our thinking. And I'd like to share with you an image used recently by Pope Francis when he was referring to the role of artist as a guardian, the guardian of beauty, who is able to kneel to bend on the scars of the world. And I think this is very important in consideration what we're trying to do here. And as a university, we can work with Triennale at several levels, but I'd like to mention a couple. First, the Africa plan of the Università Cattolica, which is strictly related to the theme of inequalities, because we intend to allow education to become an engine in order to try and reduce these inequalities. Education power. I am persuaded that the fate of the time we're living through will depend upon the role that will be played by education. We have, therefore, to educate people also to arts and design. And I believe that to this respect, we will certainly be offered a major opportunity to work together, given that we want to place at the center of Africa some education and training programs that want to be effective. And then there's another element I'd like to mention in relation to our potential cooperation, namely longevity-related inequalities, because getting old is certainly key, especially in Italy. We know that in Europe, we are the country with the highest percentage of elderly people. But what we tend to neglect often is that the quality of aging is not the same for all and everyone. So we do have some inequalities as far as the quality of aging. And so the senior economy is another sphere that we need to explore, with the idea to identify some intergenerational alliances that are developed naturally within universities, but that probably should be further highlighted and fostered in order to remove, as far as possible, also these types of inequalities in relation to the quality of aging. So at least two spheres onto which Triennale and Cattolica will be working together in the coming years.
Thank you very much, Rector Beccalli. Next, I would like to address a representative of another very important university, Milan, Mrs. Caru at the Bocconi University. So having an art hub interacting with universities, particularly a university that deals with finance in particular, is something uncommon. What is your contribution to this Expo? Well, I'd like to thank, first of all, the organizers of the 24th exhibition that involved us since the very beginning with great enthusiasm. Inequalities is particularly dear topic to Bocconi. We've been paying attention to it from different perspectives in terms of teaching, because we believe that education is a key element to bridge inequalities and provide equal opportunities to everybody, regardless of their origins. And inequalities are being a topic that research is being focusing on. Mrs. Casarico, a professor at Bocconi, is working on inequalities in Milan in particular, and in Lombardy at large, and she will definitely provide a contribution to the exhibition. And then we have another mission, another Bocconi's mission, a mission that has always been one of Bocconi's, but is now being appointed deputy rector, well aware that a university must open up to the external world, and this openness is key here in Milan. Milan is an important city for Bocconi, and I believe that Bocconi is an important university for the city of Milan. And working with the other universities, we can do a lot. Milan is a crossroad, is a melting pot, is open to the international world, and however is characterized by paradoxes and contradictions. And this is why it is a very interesting lab where universities can work together and discuss the topic of inequalities and address it. And as you said, the combination of art and economics is something uncommon. Well, we are the economic partner to measure inequalities. We believe measuring inequalities is paramount. It is only by studying and analyzing data that opportunities may arise or ideas may originate from to bridge inequalities. Art is able to look ahead and even anticipate the future. And I believe that these two approaches can really provide a lot of useful insight. A topic that is particularly dear to Bocconi University is a multidisciplinary approach. And so the idea of working with a very important artistic institution and other academies made us aware that we can, in fact, contribute to a great project and have an impact on the society. Thank you very much, Mrs. Caru. And now, let's hear from the representative of the Polytechnical School, Mr. Emilio Faroldi. How did it happen that you started working with Triennale? What should we wait from this cooperation? Well, first of all, thank you very much for the kind invitation. The topic is a very hot subject. As Stefano Boeri already pointed out, it is important to look at the topic and tackle the topic with a multidisciplinary approach. And this is the real philosophy that we have always followed at the Polytechnical School of Milan. The Polytechnical School has been working with Triennale for years now, and particularly we work every day with our students and our professors in two areas. They may seem in contradiction, but aim at the same goal, namely overcoming inequalities and at the same time enhancing differences. In a community with 60,000 people, this is the hallmark of what we do. We have adopted an ethic code including 7 words that characterize the Polytechnical School. Our campus is a city, and the city becomes our campus. So we have written these 7 words in the bricks that represent the building of the Polytechnical School. Our campus, that is international, has fostered this approach, and we as teachers want our students to arrive as young men and women and become adults. And this is why I believe the cooperation with Triennale is key for us. We talk about the cost of students homes. We actually talk about sports. We have some representatives of the Paralympics, and they all actually refer to the topic of inclusiveness. So, to conclude, we're going to contribute two projects, one intangible and one more tangible, one more classical essay, namely the impact of mobility on the city. And the intangible project refers to AI and how AI can be used to overcome inequalities. The former project is coordinated by Sandro Balducci, the latter by our rector, Donatella Schutter, who will be illustrating our contribution in a video later on. Thank you very much for your invitation and for involving us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're perfectly on time. So, the time has come to listen to Massimo Labra from Bicocca. Tell us about your relationship with Triennale and with this exposition. Thank you for your invite. Let me tell you a couple of things. Altogether, we account for 2,100 students in Milan. It is true that actually they are young students when they start their paths, and then they become more mature. So it's very important to be aware of these issues, namely inequalities. And our proposal has to do with venues and spaces. We are located in an area that is the result of an urban planning by architect Gregotti. And we wanted to unfloor some squares and plant trees. And in these green spaces, we actually give our classes, we actually perform some activities. And also citizens can participate and they can express their views. Indeed, research has got a social value when it is shared by all and everyone at all levels. Let me now speak to you as the scientific director of the National Biodiversity Future Center. Together with Stefano, we wanted to tackle the inequalities issue starting from Article 9 of our bylaws, namely biodiversity needs to be preserved to all of us, to all the services that stem from these huge diversity. But this is a value so that young generations can have access to biodiversity, same as we did. So, through this cooperation that involves also the Polytechnic, Maria Chiara Pastore is working with us on this, Forestami and other projects. We will try to tell how biodiversity is a key element in order to reduce inequalities and in order to make sure that our major interventions in nature are effective. And we are all invited to commit ourselves to protect biodiversity because this is part of our life. So these interventions are to be shared in a smart manner. Of course, unflooring a square is far from being easy, but if you do that in a shared manner, that becomes a place, an arena where people will be involved. Indeed, now on those squares, I can see students spending some time there, not just walking through it. And I think this is already a big result. Thank you, Massimo Labra from Bicocca University. I would like to mention another type of collaboration that really caught me by surprise, namely the collaboration with the hospital, with the Clinico, which is now involved in the Triennale activity. Mr. President, do you want to talk about this? Well, let me greet Giacchetti, the president of Cagranda Foundation. And together with Giacchetti, we pondered on how we could actually involve in Triennale an extraordinary resource, a cultural heritage which is not very well known to Milanese people, namely a painting collection of hundreds of portraits starting from the 16th century these paintings were kind of exchanged with the offerings made by the wealthy people at the time. So at the time, wealthy people gave their money to support the hospital, and in exchange, they received these paintings. So some research has been made on this. And Giovanni Agosti and Jacopo Stoppa will bring this initiative in the Implevium, namely at the heart of the Triennale. We'll have 40 of these portraits telling us and witnessing the history of the generosity of Milanese people. They will tell us about the act of donating, but they will also tell us the story of this city, of this incredible building that is now hosting a university, but which is still partly used as a hospital. And so we thought of hosting this unique exhibit, which is so valuable and so unexpected at the Impluvium area of a Triennale, which is its deep heart. So for this, I want to thank Marco Giacchetti and the Policlinico Foundation and Giovanni Agosti and Jacopo Stoppa. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, of course, to all the representatives of the universities involved in this exhibition. Now, Mr. President, please stay there, because now we are tackling the real themes dealt with by the 24th International Exhibitions. Now, tell us more about what we're going to discuss in the next 6 months. Can you please expand a little bit on that? And then we will share a video as well.
As already pointed out by the representatives of the university, the focus of attention at Triennale is analyzing inequalities first and foremost, but also addressing the relationship between inequalities, diversity, differences, and variations. So these are not the same words, just simply different ways to characterize the events of life. And thanks to the extraordinary job done by the curators, some of them will be here in person, some will address us through a video. This, I was saying, led us to address inequalities from two different perspectives. And these were the same perspective that were used during the September Forum. First, geopolitics of inequalities, which is a gaze on cities and territories, on the world geography, in other words, where inequalities and differences will be looked at by architecture, by urban planning and design, and the core will be accounted for by space from all points of view, and particularly space in the urban areas. And now we are going to hear from Nina Passoni. And we're going to hear from an architect who, in a way, embodies the complexity of architecture, namely Norman Foster, who will be contributing an incredible exhibit devoted to different types of settlements and how architecture can address inequalities. And then we're going to hear from Seble, who will be telling us about her project with the Bocconi University and Fondazione Cariplo, and we'll be hearing more about that in a minute. So, As I said, we're going to have 8 exhibits, 3 at the ground floor, 1 devoted to cities, curated by Nina Bassoli, 1 curated by the Foster Foundation, and the third one, with the valuable contribution of the Bocconi University, Sebe, about the city of Milan. On the second floor, we're going to have 5 exhibits that starting from Jacopo Stoppa and Giovanni Agosti exhibition in the Impluvium, dealing with poverty and wealth. All the other exhibits will focus on diversity as a value. So, for instance, Telmo Pievani will tell about some paradoxes related to biodiversity. Beatrice Colamina and Mark Wigley, who are 2 investigators and experts in space transformation, will provide us with their point of view. And this leads me to talk about our relationship with the Biennale in Venice. So we're going to host a great exhibit devoted to bacteria. So bacteria as a key element of human biodiversity, and how this has been often neglected by architecture. Modern architecture has always disregarded the fact that bacteria can play a key role. And part of this exhibit will be hosted at the Biennale in Venice. And I'm particularly satisfied to say that we have worked with the Biennale in Venice, and we have organized the opening on the 5th of May for Venice, and the 12th and 13th of May here at the Triennale of Milan. And this has been one of the major results achieved. So we're going to hear from Mr. Palmarini today, who will tell us about this exhibition. As I said, this exhibition is going to provide an incredible contribution because it will be presenting a number of proposals about longevity, for instance, not just in terms of life expectancy, but life expectancy and quality of life, which is the major challenge. And then Esther Gates, that we have already heard from. And I would like you to spend a couple of words on Identità Visiva. And you are seeing some titles projected behind us. So who curated this exhibition, first of all? Pentagram proposal appeared to be the one that was most focused on the topic of inequalities. Pentagram managed to represent inequalities in a graphical way and in a very impeccable way as well, using images that are based on a specific concept, namely comparison between disparities. But we also received other proposals, for instance, one by Filippo Teoldi, who is a journalist at The Economist, who works with data. And we will also have the contribution that is also a surprise in the modern graphics, namely Federica Fragapane, who will be dealing with inequalities in a more specific manner.
Hi everyone, I'm Giorgia Lupi, partner of Pentagram Design and Study, and I'm really honored today to present the visual identity of the international exhibition Inequalities. When Stefano Dario and the whole team presented us with this challenge, with these very important themes that are touched upon by the exhibition, indeed we wondered how can the visual identity of the exhibition itself becomes a real tool to help visitors understand the topic in a more tangible manner. And we started from data. There's lots of data that shows how these inequalities are manifest in the world, from access to health services, gender inequality in and access to the primary resources of survival. Gone as far as to plan a visual identity that is completely data-driven, data that is raw and brutal, and which we have intentionally translated visually in this way. What you see is our design process. The central idea is a large black canvas made of pixels of different resolutions that form a 100%. Using one color each corresponding to a theme of the exhibition, we're going to map the percentage of population that, for example, doesn't have access to a certain service. The variable resolution of these views reinforces the concept that there are both macro and micro inequalities. There are visible and less visible inequalities, and they are not cohesively distributed among the population. And the black background also represents this gap that must be closed. For example, in this image, you can see how 50% of the world's population doesn't have access to essential health services, and only 7% of nations recognize a gender-neutral category in identity documents. In Italy, 48.4% of people with working age disabilities are unemployed. And if we look at them all together, these images create a visual portrait of inequalities across all the forms and all the areas in which it manifests itself. We then combined this image to a distinctive typeface called a fact stencil, which takes up the geometry of the visualizations and recalls the fractures of these inequalities. And this is the final image, with the city of Milan that is filled with these views and visualizations of urgent statistics related to the different themes, where the image itself creates curiosity and makes us approach and think about the theme. Here we see it in different contexts, building these patterns that can be recurred in all which are data-driven. The identity has already been used within the Triennale space itself for the presentation event of Inequalities in September, and we can't wait to see this for real all around in Milan and during the period of the exhibition. Thank you all. Thank you. Wonderful. So let me now invite on stage some of the curators of Triennale. Let me start with Nina Bassoli. Nina, welcome. Thank you. Indeed, we've just listened from Pentagram. Let's talk with you about cities. We are very fond of this theme because cities are probably the venue where it is possible to identify inequalities in a very plastic manner. So this is the real challenge. So what can you tell us about this? Well, the idea of using cities as a magnifying lens to explore this theme started from the beginning, and this was very useful to us. As we saw through data, we all know the majority of us live in towns and cities, and of course this is data that keeps growing. But what's more relevant here is that historically cities and towns are places, are venues where inequalities were reduced, where we had greater social mobility. The encounter among different diversities certainly fostered the growth and the decrease of inequalities. But over the last decades, following some sort of universal global crisis, now there's a sort of a different trend. And nowadays, cities are knowing acceleration of these inequalities that are further exacerbated. And so we are trying now to understand better these themes, to investigate them. These themes come from all over the world. And to give you an example, in the exhibit that will take place downstairs, there will be depicted 42 different cities represented by authors and artists coming from more than 20 countries in the world. And these are designers, architects, thinkers, artists. And thanks to their look, which is always positive and proactive, bring about some ideas. So this is a kind of imaginary geography. So and proposing a sort of a journey through these cities, we are given some horizontal insights. So each city could become a good example for all the others and vice versa. And this is providing us with a different perspective compared to the development of hierarchy-based scales, which are probably no longer sufficient to think of new possible development perspective and new ways of growing, new alternatives. So This is an exhibit of large ideas. It's a kind of a large lab where we will be hosting Pritzker Prize, Alejandra Bena, Sejima, and other artists like Amos Gitai, artists of international renown. Labs like the one of Polytechnic of Milan, and together with emerging architects and artists, some of them very young, coming from all the different places in the world. So the idea is therefore to have a sort of a horizontal lab. Let me just mention an example which is very important to me. The very first one you will meet at the exhibit, and it's devoted to the dramatic fire of the Grenfell Tower, a social house and skyscraper in the center of London. We all know what happened and how many casualties it caused, and that was certainly an engine of inequalities. And now there's still a battle for justice, which is still going on. Many activists are fully involved in that dramatic event with the idea of highlighting gentrification of systemic racism. Let me just thank Norman, who will be in charge of the exhibit and who will certainly give a key contribution to this place we are building on together. It is a kind of abstract but universal city, and Lotus International, the magazine that for more than 1 year works with Triennale in its organization of the 24th International Exhibitions, and which will continue to work in the future to relaunch the study center that we're very happy to have been reactivated, thanks also to some researchers of the Polytechnic of Milan. Thank you very much.
You mentioned the Pritzker Architecture Prize awarded architect, namely Norman Foster, who will be one of the curators of the Triennale 24th exhibition. He will be discussing and tackling the topic of a housing crisis in emergency, and we have a video.
The Norman Foster Foundation shows a range of projects, united by the overall title of Inequality. The projects range from informal settlement in rural India, demonstrating that the community can be transformed from within rather than bulldozing it. We also show a project for refugee camps, an alternative to the tented accommodation, something more durable, quick build, and dignified. We show the potential for industrialized construction in Portugal. We show a clean energy project developed with MIT. So quite a range of projects. And then finally, the transformation of a war-torn city, Kharkiv in the Ukraine, and the work of the Institute on educating the civic leaders of the future. All of this comes together a kind of exhibition within an exhibition under the title of Towards a More Equal Future.
Thank you very much, Norma Foster. Thank you, Nina Basoli. So step by step, we are unveiling the numerous jewels that the Triennale has in store for us. And I would like to call on Marco Samicheli, the director of the Italian Design Museum at Triennale, and Nick Palmarini, the director of the National Innovation Center for Aging. Welcome. So let's start with Nick. I'm perfect now. So you are two experts as far as longevity is concerned. You'll be curating the exhibition devoted to longevity entitled The Republic of Longevity in Health Equality We Trust. Can you elaborate on this, please? Well, I believe the title of our exhibition already tells a lot about our view on longevity. Longevity is a topical subject. We have seen data about the aging of population worldwide. We are growing older. the number of new birth is collapsing. So now the focus is not so much living longer, but living longer and be healthy. But this doesn't apply only to people. I mean, longevity has not to do with the elderly only. Longevity has to do with everyone in this room. It has to do with young people as well. It has to do with the planet. And so we have to design longevity strategy that is, of course, individual. And when we talk about longevity, we think of ourselves. We think of being healthy, remaining healthy. But there is also a social dimension of longevity. If people feel well, if there is widespread well-being, then the society can grow and the humankind can grow and progress. We talked about education. Well, in Italy, for instance, life expectancy becomes 6 years longer if you have a university degree versus a primary school degree. And then longevity has also political implications. All these strategies can be put in place only if there is political will, because longevity has to do with each and every one of us. All the dimensions of longevity that will be tackled at the Triennale have to do with what we do. So a square can be transformed into a meeting point only if there is an underlying policy. So longevity is a public goods, which has to do with our daily lives. So we didn't confine ourselves to highlighting inequalities only, but we made our proposal by inventing a republic that doesn't exist, what we would define the republic of longevity. And in health equality, we trust. So we have elevated the U.S. belief in God, we trust, into something even higher. So we have created a kind of a path, a rolling between ministries that should exist in every republic. For instance, the Ministry of Scope, the Ministry of Food Democracy, or the Ministry of Remaining Active and Living Together. And we have used the language of design to translate these ideas into everyday life, to highlight that social dimension that characterizes our behaviors. I mean, we can do a lot to feel better, but if I'm not educated enough to know what has to be done, then there is an issue in terms of education, and a policy is needed to create the conditions and enable each and every one of us to act. So, in other words, we have developed a journey and tried and created storytelling about inequalities. And now I'll leave the floor to my colleague, Marco. Well, design is a discipline that observes behaviors and accompanies them. So we reacted to Nick Palmarini's research by putting in place what has been part of our tradition. So Republic of Longevity is a republic that takes upon itself the responsibility to create a city with ministries that can be visited by the visitors. These ministries have an heritage contributed by designers coming from all over the world, contemporary designers who have been working on projects that raise questions and at the same time try and provide answers. So it is a journey, as we heard, and following the Triennale tradition, graphics, fashion, interiors and architecture have all been involved, and they actually offer some insight. Nick Palmarini and I decided that this exhibition had to be entertaining, to give the opportunity to the visitors to look outside the Palazzo dell'Arte and understand that our key role is a real one, namely spread knowledge, raise questions, and provide answers. Thank you very much. And if I may, I would like to step in. Please tell us the names of the ministries. Well, the Ministry of Sleep, for instance. Then we have the Ministry of Gaze, or I can't remember all the names, but we have created a number of them. For instance, we have the Ministry of Purpose. We have the Ministry of Sleep Equalities, the Ministry of Food Equalities, the Ministry of Staying Together, the Ministry of Freedom of Staying Active, but there are so many others, and I don't want to unveil all of them. And the idea that longevity goes hand in hand with pharmacological care. This is something we reject, whereas staying active, remaining active, and being together and spending time together is the best cure. So thank you very much to both of you. And let's move on to the other contributions. We are going to have a video by Beatrice Colomina, expert in the history of architecture at Princeton University, and Mark Wigley, architect and teacher at the Columbia University in New York, will be curating the exhibition With the Bacteria, Notes Toward Biotic Architecture, exploring the interaction between bacteria and buildings.
Hi, we are very happy to participate in this Triennale. Our section is entitled With the Bacteria, Notes Towards Biotic Architecture.
We argue that to think about inequalities is ultimately to think about health, well-being in its widest sense.
And paradigms of health evolve, and health is increasingly understood today in terms of the microbiome, the trillions of microbes that inhabit us, feed us, maintain us, and defend us. Many of the diseases of our time, obesity, diabetes, cancers, autoimmune disorders, allergies, autism, or even Alzheimer's, are now understood as the consequence of the diminishing diversity of bacteria. And this is what is important. Architecture is implicated.
Right, and these diseases of the environment are completely inseparable from planetary health. The whole biosphere. Inequalities have to be thought, let's say, beyond the human, which also means, let's say, thinking about the human differently, seeing the human as a mobile ecosystem, inhabited by vast communities of microbes and suspended within a completely microbial world.
There is a double crisis today. On the one hand, the diversity of the human microbiome is diminishing exponentially, and on the other hand, antimicrobial resistance is rising to become the biggest global killer by 2050, with the biggest impact on those suffering from inequality. Some scientists see this crisis as a bigger crisis than the crisis of climate change.
Now, architecture is implicated on both sides of this crisis. So a completely new paradigm is needed in which microbes are collaborators rather than enemies. The first section of our exhibition presents an alternative history of 10,000 years of architecture from the point of view of microbes. And in the second section, we've invited 10 different design studios working with microbiologists to present working installations of completely new ways to collaborate with microbes.
They all represent different ways of living with others. We are looking forward to see you in May.
See you there.
Thank you.
Grazie mille a Beatrice Colomina e Marco.
Thank you very much, Beatrice Colomina and Mark Wigley, for the way they presented their initiative. We've already been together for more than 60 minutes. We haven't mentioned yet the artificial intelligence, but now the time has come to talk about artificial intelligence. We're going to do this with Donatella Sciu, director of the Polytechnic of Milan, who will tell us about the installation, not for her, made with the artificial intelligence. Let's enjoy the... The Polytechnic of Milan participates in the 24th International Exhibition with a project that combines research and innovation, addressing the issue of inequalities through a technological perspective, focusing on merit and commitment that should be the only determining factors in a person's professional career. However, invisible gender barriers continue to affect career opportunities, even in the most advanced sectors. The installation, not for her, I Reveal in by Unseen, was developed by researchers at the Polytechnic of Milan in collaboration with ML Cube, a spin-off of the university, with a contribution of Variante Artistica. The project involved the 3 departments of the university, integrating skills in design, engineering, and architecture, to analyze, through a multidisciplinary approach, the often invisible dynamics of gender inequalities. The installation is divided into distinct moments. The first is an artistic and multimedia triptych that highlights the narratives that are implicit in social media and in the contemporary visual language. The second is a direct interaction with adaptive artificial intelligence, capable of listening, reacting, and modulating its responses in real time. Every experience is unique. The system adapts to the interlocutor, transforming the dialogue into a moment of awareness. What seemed normal will be reverberated into a new light, making visible what usually remains hidden. How can we recognize and overcome the biases if we're not able to see them? Not for Her is not only an installation to be observed, but an experience to go through. This project represents a concrete example of the commitment of the Polytechnic of Milan in promoting a critical and conscious use of artificial intelligence through research, art, and technology. As some inequalities can indeed be told, but others must be lived to really be understood. Artificial intelligence is therefore a powerful and just means of ensuring inclusive and equitable development. A required act on the part of the scientific community and the research community that is the protagonist of an epochal change. Thank you so much to the rector of Polytechnic. Let's move quickly to the next video. Telmo Pievani, you all know it, evolutionist and philosopher, science philosopher. Let's hear from him. Inequalities and environmental crises are two closely related dimensions. The loss of biodiversity and anthropogenic climate warming, the collapse of the ecosystems, mainly affect the poorest countries on Earth, those that are located in the equatorial and tropical belt. And in turn, this injustice, this inequality, worsens the environmental crisis, as it induces unsustainable exploitation of resources. We must therefore break this vicious circle. We must defend together the environmental justice, social justice, biological diversity, and cultural diversity. In the exhibition that I will have the privilege of curating on the occasion of the 24th International Exhibition of Triennale, we will tell these stories, these connections. We will do it through a journey to 8 cities in a broad sense, because there aren't only human cities. We also have cities made of octopuses, beavers, mushrooms, microbes. We will do it through a very special exhibit made of biodiversity, so all made with organic materials. And therefore, we will walk in the middle of an exhibit of mushrooms, recycled wood, bioplastics, to convey this profound message. So it is a peculiar, hopefully unique project, because indeed we cannot survive certainly through a nostalgic idea of an uncontaminated nature that had never existed, nor can we save ourselves by imagining miraculous technologies. We will survive through a new co-design, a new co-evolution. We will try to tell these stories with lots of science, of course, but also, hopefully, with a pinch of emotion. I'll be waiting for you. Thank you, Telmo Pievani. I shall also thank you, Marco San Michele and Nick Palmarini, for their contributions and the wonderful ministers you talked about. Let's move on.
And let's call on stage Mr. Damiano Gulli, who is the curator for contemporary art and public program at Triennale Milano. Welcome. Seble Wolde Yorgis, strategic consultant, and Germain Michel Gabriel, director of the Black History Month Milano Collective. Welcome. So, Cuore, that is an incredible place, which I hope you have all visited already, that is the study center and the archives at Triennale, will host a nice project, a project dedicated to the city of Milan, called Milano, Paradossi, Opportunità, Milan, Paradoxes and Opportunities. Where does this project start from? Well, thank you very much and welcome. Well, first of all, it stems from the idea of looking at inequalities in a courageous way, not only from an international, but also from a local perspective. So local and global at the same time. Milan is a complex city, very dynamic, competitive and attractive city, but at the same time a city that witnesses a widening of the economic and social divide that condition the people of the lives of the people who live in the city, impacting on the opportunities they have to grow as individuals and as members of the society. But Milan, as I said, is a complex city. So how shall we tackle it? First of all, we decided to look at Milano from different perspectives, and then we had to decide how to do it. Data is a key element, because if you use data, you can then support your conclusions. And Mrs. Carullo provided us with a great contribution at the Bocconi University. So we asked them to unravel this complexity. How can we look at inequalities in Milan? And Bocconi provided us with a very interesting tool, namely paradoxes. Milan is characterized by paradoxes and contradictions and great opportunities at the same time that affect and influence the lives of the people who live in Milan. So we have identified a number of paradoxes that tell about those who live in Milan and those who are attracted by Milan and rejected by Milan. And then how do people who live in Milan experience their lives in Milan? So thanks to Bocconi, we'll be going through the paradoxes of Milan. But as I said, it's not just a matter of paradoxes. We didn't want to provide only biased view about what is not working in Milan, because we believe that looking at paradoxes with courage, we can see opportunities, which means also the opportunity to experience the city in a different way. So this combination of paradoxes and opportunities make it possible to highlight the potential of Milan. I'm not going to dwell on these paradoxes because it will be nice when visitors come and see the exhibition to understand what we're talking about. But there is one paradox in particular that tells about a city that is facing difficulties but is also rich in potential. And therefore citizens can actually be involved and transform paradoxes into opportunities, which has always been a distinctive feature of Milan. The individual growth has always been one of the great opportunities provided by Milan. So there are paradoxes, but there are also opportunities. And allow me to thank the president and the director of Triennale. And I also would like to make another acknowledgement, because this is the first time I work at Triennale. So I would like to thank Beatrice Battucci and Mrs. Mayron, who have given me the opportunity to have an incredible experience here in Milan. So I'm happy I've had this opportunity, and I'm sure it's going to be a very, very useful experience. So thank you very much. And we would like to thank all those who work behind the scenes who are not on the stage today. But I would like to ask a question to Germain to understand what you have done in terms of artistic research. Well, first of all, I would like to start with acknowledgements too. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity for being here as a representative of Black History Month in Milano. So I would like to thank all the organizers and the team that has worked with us. I would like to thank my board and my staff, and so much for acknowledgements. We heard about the Ministry of spending time together. Well, we started from data, analytical data, scientific data, provided to us by the Bocconi University and translated cold and aseptic data into something that is artistic is by no means an easy task. But we have selected the artists that, in our opinion, were the most appropriate to transform data into art. So we had a residential meeting in Florence. We pulled together these artists to foster an exchange of ideas and experience. That was an opportunity to, again, dialogue and exchange ideas and views. An artist can interpret data in a way, but what happens when the artist leaves his or her comfort zone and becomes part of a group? And so this is a process, an ongoing process, and the great challenge the artists are faced with is, again, analyzing contrasts and paradoxes that can then become opportunities. So Bocconi University provided us with data, and we see what is going to happen. As I said, this is an experiment, and definitely not an easy one. Transforming data into art is, again, by no means an easy task, but it is a process, as I said. So what our city was, what our city is, and what our city will become is actually the core of this process, a process that already covered 6 months and will take 2 additional months before the exhibition. Thank you very much, Germain. And now the floor to Mr. Damiano Gulli to hear from another curator.
In consideration of what has already been said by Germain, just let me add that this challenge of moving from data to artistic vision certainly is based on the horizontal work made for the exhibit of Cuore. So you will find this research and insight area, but you will notice that there will be a kind of movement from artistic visions to the data exposition to the translation of this data into systems with video that will further dig into this theme. So there will be different voices that you'll be hearing, from artistic to scientific voices. In addition, this will be an arena where you could further study the content itself of the international exhibition, because Cuore contains some archives, a library, so there will be some biography available to the public with all the volumes gathered by the different curators in order to find out more about the contents of the exhibits and also the contents of history months and the research this institution is carrying out. So actually it will be a living heart open to the city, Cuore. Thank you, Damiano. But together with you, I'd like to talk about Radio Ballads, which is a project curated by the Serpentine Galleries, and it's about radio and sound, and that's very important to me. So it's about a series of radio dramas broadcast on BBC between the 50s and the 60s. Yes, indeed. There was this radio show on BBC that involved workers and several communities that were supposed to tell through the voices and the sounds of the protagonists, the voices of London. Now, after some years, the Serpentine Galleries decided to repropose this project, and this is the restitution of a project lasting for several years during the pandemic, and so a period characterized by important social and economic changes. And these ballads were translated, so to speak, by 4 artists who worked together. So this is a team group which talks about the city of London through some videos, artistic installations. In Triennale here, we will be presenting the videos made by Serpentine, presented for the very first time here in Italy. And this is also a way to analyze how artistic processes can support the major systemic changes. So this is a way to contribute to this collective debate. In addition, in Italy, thanks to Radio Raim, our radio station that we have here at Triennale, so from radio ballads of BBC, we'll propose new ballads here at Triennale, starting with the ballads of the artists, but Radio Rahim will also be the voice of all the stories that will be generated at the International Exposition. So there's a kind of a constant link between these two elements. Thank you, Damiano. You mentioned Hans-Ulrich Obrist, the director of the Serpentine Gallery, one of the most well-known curators in the world. Let's hear Obrist. Good morning, everyone. Today is March the 5th, 2025, and I'm very happy to briefly introduce this radio ballad project to you, a project by Serpentine in London, together with the Borough of Banking and Dagenham, which is also part of the New Town Culture programs of this borough. It is a 2022 project presented here for the first time outside of England, and it is a result of a collaboration of 4 artists. They all worked on a film: Sonia Boyce, Ellen Kammock, Rory Pilgrim, and Ilona Sagar. And these artists worked for a couple of years with social workers, with carers, with organizers, and this is a long-term project onto the collective storytelling, namely the idea of telling stories in a collective way. It is a project curated by Amal Kanaf, Elizabeth Graham, Lana Gatons, together with Natalia Grabowska. And we are very happy with about this collaboration with Triennale. As we always say, Triennale di Milano and Serpentine, 1 and 1 equals 11. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you so much to Hans-Ulrich Obrist. And now, thank you, Damiano, Seble, and Germain. Thank you for telling us your contributions to the exhibition. And I shall invite Umberto Angelini to join me to the podium, Artistic Director of Teatro Triennale. Welcome, Umberto. So Inequalities will also include a performative program. So tell us more about this. Well, good afternoon. We invited some artists to ponder about the dreams, the crises, and also the hopes of an unequal society. They will do that through their bodies. So unequal bodies, scenic bodies, which will also become sensitive vectors of the injustice of the predominance in terms of economy and other factors. We will start with Pippin Tom, the Pippin Tom company that will be working on the transformation. So how it is possible to create a new relation between humans and nature, to create a new forms of communities. Then we'll have Una Mussi with Cinema Impero. And this is indeed the name built by Messina in Asmara in 1937. And we have Una Mussi and AI together through a video, one-to-one. And this is done by proposing new versions of knowledge. So here the issue of inequalities based on the information, on the history we know. And then there's another project I want to mention, by Nelson Makengo from Congo. He will tell us about a very common phenomenon in Kinshasa, 17 million of inhabitants, namely lack of electricity, which is a concrete factor that acquires some religious and social meanings. And this relationship between darkness and light actually is related to the social inequalities. And then Fabio Keptis will tell us the queer arena in New York in the 80s through the history, through the story of three underground artists that are now very well known, which suffered the social stigma at the time. So sex-related marginalization. Virgilio Seni, the most important Italian choreographer, with a dancer, present us new opportunities. And then we will be hosting two Lebanese dancers, Jana Hatchoumas and Kajid Joref, in northern Lebanon, in a refugees camp. A clash between a Lebanese group and another group actually allowed us to discover the remains of an ancient Roman town. So what happened when actually this discovery was made into a refugee camp? From there, they needed to oblige these people to leave and go elsewhere, or rather to intervene in situ to protect the architectural discovery. From here, the work of these two artists and Cristina Cristarizzo and Diana Anselmo instead will propose a choreography with a deaf performer, an activist, and they will be talking about isolation. How can we think, therefore, of new ways to listen to people, new forms of relations through different devices and practices? And then there will also be a video telling us the work carried out by Chiara Bersani, our new associated artist. Let's enjoy Chiara Bersani's video, who will present to us her initiative.
Hi, I'm Chiara Bersani. I'm an associated artist at the Triennale Milano. I'm particularly happy that the topic selected for the next Expo is inequalities, as it fits perfectly with my project, the project that is currently ongoing and on which I'm working on, called Michelle. Michelle stems from the idea there's some sort of a collective storytelling depicting these handicapped artists as an exception, as a kind of divine alien genius, like, the rule confirming, the exception confirming the rule. Whereas I believe that handicapped artists are generally prevented from developing their talents, and there would be many more disabled artists if the society and the state worked differently. With my project, I use a solo that I developed during the pandemic called The Animal, and that had been made possible also thanks to the cooperation with Triennale Teatro. And I've transformed this solo into a choir. So the choir will include three disabled people whom we are still looking for, and therefore it won't longer be something, extraordinary, divine, or exceptional, but since there will be three people involved, this will become the new rule. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Mr. Angelini at Triennale Teatro. So we have had an overview of the rich program of the 24th exhibition. We have been definitely very good at sticking to the time allotted to us. We still have a few minutes for the conclusions by the director and the president. So, Mrs. Morogallo, can you tell us something about the special projects that will be hosted at the exhibition? Well, one of the projects that is particularly dear to our heart was developed together with Fondazione Cariplo, drawing inspiration from the Paradoxes and Opportunities project. So we believe this exhibition must be really pervasive and go outside the Palazzo dell'Arte of the Triennale Milano to reach everybody. And that's why we have conceived the Triennale on Tour, that is a mobile vehicle touring around. We'll spend 3 days in 8 different cities and towns, focusing on social issues. We'll be organizing research activity, also performances for families, adolescents and children to increase the awareness of all the inequality-related issues, and also involve young people ranging from 3 to 18 years of age, as well as households and schools, and put forward their proposals and their initiatives to increase the awareness about inequalities. And then they will also be invited to visit the international exhibition free of charge. Thank you very much for mentioning this special projects. We have a project that will involve Cora Media, so we'll be using our podcast to convey our message about inequalities, which is, again, a topic very dear to our hearts. So we're happy to have the opportunity to contribute using our podcasts, and we believe this is the best way to bring this thinking outside the walls of the Triennale. And if I may, with Will and Cora Media, we've been working on new formats that will involve one of the areas here in Triennale. So while we are working on this 24th International Exhibition, we are at the same time developing new spaces at Triennale, as we did in February 24 when we reopened the Core Study Center. On the occasion of the 24th International Expo, we'll be opening a new space devoted to music. And this will involve Cora Media, of course. And we are particularly happy to be there. But now I would like to leave the floor for the final conclusions, since we are running a bit late. In the press documents, you find the contribution by the Minister on Culture. Anyway, we will have time to ask questions to the curator at the end. So just to conclude, Mr. President, at the opening of the exhibition, Art for Tomorrow will be hosted as well. Well, first of all, we forgot mentioning that the design work of behind the exhibition, which is extremely important work that implies deciding where the installations are going to be placed and so on and so forth. Well, this work has been carried out by 6 young architects and designers. We have made an effort to recognize the talents among Italian designers and architects. So the young talents involved have done a great job, and we are happy we have been able to involve them. And then, as you said, on the 12th to the 14th of May, so the opening day, and then the 2 following days of the 24th exhibition, thanks to Art for Tomorrow and the cooperation with the Milano and Partners Democracy and Cultural Foundation, and above all, thanks to the cooperation with the New York Times, a forum will be held on the topic of inequalities, top-level meeting involving artists, designers coming from all over the world, like Jeff Koons, Pearl Lam, Joanne Lee, Alvaro Barrington, Michele De Lucchi, just to mention an Italian architect, and many others, of course. Vincento Dolli, Hans-Ulrich Obrist, and all the curators whom you have heard from today will be discussing the topic of inequalities, referring to all the initiatives organized at the Triennale. So we are happy that New York Times is actually following our initiatives. So, Director, I think you have to conclude the morning with some acknowledgements. Well, this exhibition is the result of a joint effort, and therefore I would like to thank the Board of Directors and the Scientific Committee, Triennale, the Bureau International des Expositions, the Ministry on Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry on Culture, and the universities whom you have heard from. Then I would like to thank the Enrico Mattei Foundation that will contribute to public program with a number of initiatives, and then the technical and economic partners that make the exhibition possible, including Lavazza, Salone del Mobile, who are our main partners, then Deloitte and Deloitte Foundation, education partner Scalo Milano, and then Will Media, Streetvox, ATM, and you all who have been so patient to be here this morning and listen to us. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the opening day of the exhibition. And you can ask questions to the curators who are still in the room.